Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning. Welcome you all to this next lecture in this particular course on analytical spectral microscopy applications of inorganic compounds and nanomaterials. We have been doing in the past 3-4 classes or so on the microscopy aspects, and we have looked at the general principles, some more details into the atomic force microscopy, which does not use any electrons, etc., uses some kind of a tip which to touch the surface of it. Looked at some examples of how one can utilize AFM. AFM is a host of techniques wherein you can measure a large number of material properties as well. So therefore you can connect all those kinds of units for additional measurements. And then we also have looked at the basic concepts, principle corresponding to the electron microscopy, and in particular the transmission electron microscopy. And I think we need to look at some examples of these based on the transmission electron microscopy, and then we will move into the scanning electron microscopy in this particular topic. Let me draw your attention to this first example in this particular transmission electron microscopy thing that we have. See, the literature is full of examples, so obviously one cannot cover even 1 billionth part of that. So obviously I have taken a few representative examples of the recent origin and then try to present to you. Okay, so draw your attention to this particular slide and see that there are, even if you don't know what it is, you can see things like spheres, like rods, and rods with different dimensions, like the longitudinal versus the transverse dimensions. So this much one can always see that. But this you are seeing because you have taken a transmission electron microscope. This is not just a picture using a camera which gives the light. Okay, so that means you are able to see the materials along with their shapes as well, and that is where. And these materials are, as you will see in a while, are in the nanometric size, a few nanometers to about 100 nanometers in that range, etc. So not much greater. So if you use a light microscope, obviously you will not be able to see at all any clarity, no resolution will be there. This entire film will come like some kind of a blurred thing and will not be able to see that. Here you can see the shape, size, dimensions, everything you can do that. Of course, the ultimate goal of this particular paper from where I took is that they were trying to compare the efficiency of the solar conversion, the light conversion to energy. That's what is called basically. The light is from the solar, so therefore solar. So these are used in the solar cells to convert the light energy into the working energy, electrical energy, any of those kind of thing. That's what. This conversion efficiency is the one which is top. So by materials on their own, by materials which are impregnated with something, or by materials which are coated with something else, that is what basically the application field in this, and they are all nanomaterials of this. Okay, so this is the TM for these gold nanoparticles by using different kind of synthetic methods, which is not a part of this particular course. You can synthesize one particular type of thing, or it can be even a mixture. So you can change the conditions and convert the mixture into one single. So all these, not only these 3 shapes which are shown or 2 shapes which are shown here, there are many more which will show another example as well, additional kind of things too. You can see, talk about the purity of this. Of course, these are the rods, but in between you can see some small spherical shape. So getting 100% of complete purity is also very difficult in that. So you can see a lot of the rods which are small, the spherical ones as well. Okay, so that is a great challenge, and people, researchers have achieved very high percentage of purity, of course, already, which is reasonably good enough for the application purpose to attribute whatever the property that you're finding to that particular shape, to that particular size, to that particular surface area, to that particular porosity, depending upon what kind of things. In this case, we don't talk so much about the porosity because these are the nanorods and nanospheres which are made up of the metal, which is gold. And similarly, you can also have with the silver, you can also have with nickel, you can also have with other kinds of metals as well. Okay, so as I said, the preparation of course are there, well developed techniques over the period of in the past 3-4 decades. And initial days people were getting some kind of a mixtures, but later on the methods have been so much modified that you can get individual ones. In this particular case, this you can see with the different magnifications here, gold nano spheres, which you can see two different same, and here nanorods, and again another kind of a nanorods. So what will be different? Difference will be this dimension, which is the diameter versus the length. So that is what is basically called the aspect ratio, the length by the diameter. Here also length by the diameter. So these are something like 2.5. This is called aspect ratio, and this is an aspect ratio of 4. So you can make even that kind of a fine difference in the synthesis to lead to these kind of things. So that means you can think of very high purity. At times, the inhomogeneity is also useful. You can mix certain proportion of these with the spheres or some other things and then get certain efficiency. Now, having said this, and then microscopy, transmission electron microscopy is capable of showing you the size, dimension, structure, shape, everything, as you can see, just like as if you clicked a camera photograph of that. Now let us come into the purpose that these people have made in this particular paper is that these long gold nanorods, which means the aspect ratio is one type of it, and the shorter ones aspect ratio will be smaller, and these are the kinds of things they give 6.77, 7.08, 7.29. So the gold nanoparticles, short and long, these ones. So you can see that there is certain level of dependency of the conversion efficiency of the light to the energy or the electrical energy or solar cell conversions. So dependent upon the, not only just the, in all the cases it is the gold, but it is the difference in terms of the dimensions and shapes of that. Okay. So this means that TEM will help you when you are trying to work out for various shapes to meet certain kind of a application deadlines of that. Okay, I hope that is understood. So to give a little extended flavor of what we talked about, so I again draw your attention to this particular micrographs which are shown, again transmission electron micrographs. You start seeing something more than what you have seen earlier. So you have something like a spheres here, you can see. Of course, the contrast is taken differently, which I explained to you earlier, dark field and bright field. So these are the things that you have seen. So based on that, you can see the picture as main as the dark, the rest is the gray or the reverse, and the main object is the gray and the rest of the object is dark. So those kinds of things we already have looked at. The details of those, how to do instrumentation is not important, though I mentioned in the early classes of that. So here you have additional ones, triangles. You can see that, of course, these are a difference in the size, etc. Then you have these hexagon kind of a shape structures. Of course, if these get carved out, it will become more or less like a sphere, and these are the hexagons. So you can make beyond spheres, and not only rods, spheres with different sizes, rods with different aspect ratios, and then you can also make the triangles, hexagons, again different sizes of these. So these are the things, and with different metals, not only with the gold. Those example here is gold. You can make with the silver, you can make with the copper, you can make with the zinc, other kinds of things, metals as well, nickel. So a lot of these things. In this paper, this is from another paper. So this was done with a view to identify how these kind of shapes of these gold nanoparticles are going to influence the biochemical response, which is studied with some epithelial cells, which is labeled as CALU-3. This is not important, that if you Google you will find. So these are made obviously, and the studies were done with the AAS, atomic absorption spectroscopy, which I have talked in the very beginning of this particular course. And what will this atomic absorption spectroscopy tell? Inside the cell, how much of these nanoparticles have got accumulated, and so that concentration that can be obtained. And then transmission electron microscopy will tell you the image even inside the cell. You can even count the number, how many number of that kind of a nanoparticles have entered. For example, the spherical one, the triangular one, the hexagonal one. So you can get all of them. And then the biochemical work has been done with an incubation of 72 hours. That is again not important parameter, because we are comparing the results of these for all of them at the same experimental conditions, time, etc. So in this particular case, the results, if you look at the 1 milligram per ml of all the three types, the hexagonal, the triangular and the spherical. So these were done, and then the cells, whether they are viable, whether they lose their viability, means they get killed. So these are the kinds of viability comes something like 60%, below 60% for a hexagonal, and as compared to the spherical and as compared to the triangular. So when they try to probe into what the kind of a cause or reason for this, they find inside the cells a lot of experiments have been done and then counted the number of you take the same concentration, incubate the same cells, but with in one case spherical, other case triangular, other case hexagonal. Now you look at inside the cell, how many sphericals have entered in, how many hexagonals have entered in, how many triangles. Three different experiments, of course. You can multi measure these and take the average. That's how they look at that. So therefore they find the 2 of the spherical, whereas 1 of the triangular, 3 of the hexagonal. That means more of the hexagonals have got in as compared to the spherical, as compared to the triangular, for given experimental conditions. Same cells, same concentration, but different gold nanoparticles of different shapes, etc. And the reaction conditions, everything else is same, all the treatments, everything, which is not important. So you find it is not because of the shape of the particle direct correlation, but it is the entry of these, the number of such particles entered inside the cell, and that is what is making the difference. That is what is identified with this. The hexagons are going more in proportion, 3 times as compared to the triangular, and whereas spherical goes to twice to that of the spherical, the triangular. So at the end, it is, you cannot make a direct correlation of the shape to the biological activity or cell survival, etc. But you can make indirectly the number of such things entered into that. So that has some the relevance with respect to shape as well, the entry of that. So for the entry into the cell itself is the one which is. So you can see these findings do not suggest a direct shape toxicity effect, but however do highlight the contributions of the shape towards the gold nanoparticle, GNP means cell interaction, which impacts upon their intracellular number, mass and volume. So how many are going in, how much concentration of the nanoparticle, which type of nanoparticles, those are the kinds of things. Okay, I hope you got some idea about the nanoparticle, and we cannot spend as much time as I've spent for these ones. The remaining things we can go a little bit quicker manner as compared to what. So let us look at a few slides of the nanocomposites. Okay, these are all again made for some purpose. In this particular case, mechanical properties is their purpose. So of course you have to synthesize, you have to optimize the conditions, which will not do here in this particular slides. And of course the characterization, synthesis, characterization and the properties. So in the characterization, this your RTAM is going to be the helpful one. And from characterization you go to the measurements and then go back and forth, compare. Okay, and then go back and give your feedback to the synthesis. So the synthesis people can modify the synthesis and give the way that you would like to have. So that is how these are all interconnected. The synthesis, the characterization, materials properties, and then go backwards again. So these are interconnected things. So here is an example, a morphological analysis of the Fe2O3. Again, draw your attention to this slide, please. And this, we have the TM shown here for the Fe2O3 graphene nanocomposite. A is Fe2O3 graphene particle on a sheet. Graphene obviously is a graphene sheet, and the B to D, that B, C, and D, or the Fe2O3 graphene sheet on sheet. So the sheets are getting overlaid, and then you have the nanoparticle on that. So that is what is other kinds of a composite. So from here to here to here, it is the same study, but the magnifications are different. Here this much size is 500 nanometers, and almost the same size is 200 nanometers, so which means increased. And little more than half of that is 100, that means a little more. So from here to here, from here to here, so B to C, C to D, there is an increase in the magnification. Okay, so these are, you can see the background, these are the graphene sheets, and then these dark spots you can see they are your Fe2CO3 nanoparticles. So this is a composite. So nanoparticles got embedded into the graphene nanosheets. So that is where you try to look for certain properties, certain stabilities, thermal stabilities, and better mechanical, better electrical. These are the reasons why you put here the sheet on kind of a sheet, and then you have your nanoparticles into that. And you can see further increase in this, more closer. So you have more density is also being increased in these things. So graphene based nanocomposites possess excellent mechanical, electrical, thermal, optical, and chemical. So everything. So gamut of properties are being covered here, and that means these depending upon the type of a polymer that you use, depending upon the type of the nanoparticle you have used, type of the metal you have in that, you can vary this. So you can tune. That is how the material science develops. So materials properties are developed. Therefore, devices are being made. And these materials have potential applications in high performance transistors, biomedical systems of electrical type, mechanical type, thermal type, optical type, and their sensors and the solar cells, all those. Okay, so this is basically for a case where this lithium ion batteries is being used because this graphite is used as a conductor and a good conductor. Now this is a modified form of the graphite with the Fe2CO3, and we don't need to go into the details of how it is synthesized, etc. Has been prepared as an anode for lithium ion batteries. So it was confirmed that Fe2O3 nanosheets were uniformly dispersed, as you can see, among graphene nanosheets from a unique sheet on sheet structure. You can see here, this is just a kind of a single sheet, but here the sheets got folded and sheet on sheet, what they're referring to that sheet structure. That means your nanoparticles are really got embedded into that. So large number of pristine Fe2CO3 nanoparticles are shown, and if you use these, obviously these are the HRTM pictures. If you go, then you can get the precise size of these things. So you can go even, of course, all details are not shown here. So only a few pictures are shown here. These people might have done even up to 20 or 30 nanometer resolutions as well, or expansion. So the particle size here are 30 to 50 nanometer, and these nanoparticles and nanosheets are clearly uniformly distributed on graphene nanosheets, and then goes into their mechanical strengths and other kinds of things. For every case, I give the corresponding the referencing. So if somebody would like to go through more details, the paper will not have only just the TM. They will have a lot of other things. Here I am taking just the TM part of it. Okay, so I hope you. So not only this, wherever I have explained an example, and I have explained an example in every case, and in each case I have given the reference, but that reference may not necessarily be having only that data, but it will have many additional data as well. Now let us look at another example of the graphene oxide kind of thing, but with not the Fe2O3. This is COFe2O4, cobalt, this thing. These are highly useful for the magnetic kind of materials. So therefore, their distribution, their concentration, their structural parameters like crystalline parameter, what kind of a crystalline structures, All of these are important at the nano level if you want to predict, if you want to correlate with the property. You want to predict a good property, will expect it, and as well as correlate the property. I hope it is understood. So all these techniques will help in developing your materials. So material science and materials technology this. Okay, so let's look at this figure caption here. TM image of the GO sheets in the A, and these are the nanoparticles COFe2O4, and GO is graphene oxide nano sheets. So you can see the background. This is only the graphene oxide. This is only graphene oxide, and this is graphene oxide coated with these kind of things. Okay, and then this is the HRTEM of this. See, even 1 nanometer level, that level. So that level will give what? In the crystal lattice, the plane distance, interplanar. I explained to you during the powder diffraction, interplanar distances, DHKL. So those kind of things can also be studied. So that, to study that, you have to go to the nanometric level. To study the size and shape, even if you go to 10 nanometers, 20 nanometers, 50 nanometers, reasonably good enough. You want to see the surface and you have to see what is inside, how dense, how light, then you need to go to more and more higher resolution side. And this 1 nanometer will give, so that will give you D distance. From this you can tell what kind of elasticity you have. And that's straight away that I explained to you even when we talked about the X-ray diffraction. Now you can also choose a small region in this particular thing and focus the electrons on that and collect the diffraction pattern. I already explained when we started this microscopy the electron diffraction, and we have already seen the powder diffraction, the X-ray diffraction. So these are electron diffraction things of a selected area, in the selected area. And now you can see, I draw your attention to the slide, and you can see the rings, the spots which are connected with the rings, and these are labeled with different the planes. So HKL planes 111, 220, 311, etc. From this, what you get? You get a crystal lattice, crystal structure as a whole. So you can get. So from that, you can correlate the properties with respect to what you want. So here it is a cobalt iron. You can have some nickel iron also. So what do we will require? How would you change? Or some of the iron may be doped with another manganese or something. How the properties will change. So you see how it expands the research, the chemical materials research related to these kind of a chemical aspects, and turns into the technology into that. Okay, so this you can see that the average particle size here, the nanosheets is 18 plus or minus 2. So this is a 5 nanometer, this is 1 nanometer thing, and this is angstrom level obviously, because you have to get the diffraction. Diffraction will get from the angstrom level of this. So these are all preparation, other things not important. The spacing will give you the crystal lattice, crystal structure, and this is the one which will, so it gives hexagonally arranged carbon atoms. You can see this carbon atoms on this. This is from the graphene sheet. So you can get, and then you have all this. So this gives you a very characteristic means of approaching how to develop your material, how to modify your chemical components in that, how to modify the structural components, thereby electrical, magnetic, and all kinds of things, optical, all properties. Another example of little bit more complex, that means cluster based kind of a structures. You can see these here. This is a multi-scale filler structure. Okay, simplified industrial nanocomposites. Silica SBR is a polymer used by SAX, the small angle X-ray scattering, which gives you the clusters, the cluster structures, small angle X-ray structures, X-ray scattering that, and of course the TM. So you have the TM, and this particular thing is not the SAXS, but from the SAXS this structure is being derived, and this structure has a correlation with what kind of the structures you have. So you see some of these things will be reminiscent of these ones, some of these ones are this. Therefore, the SAX small angle X-ray scattering has helped in terms of modeling the structure for this particular cluster. So you have in the cluster you have individual nanoparticle, and you have smaller clusters, you have a larger clusters, you have branches. This whole thing is the one which you see here, which you see here, which you see there, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a silica, a simplified zeosil, and BSR is 140 kilodalton, the silanol and groups nanocomposites. Okay, so these are the composites which are used in some industrial applications. If you're interested, you can always look at that. These are basically thermal versus mechanical properties of that. So depending upon the structure, your thermal mechanical information is embedded into that. So some of them will be very thermally strong, thermally stable and mechanically strong. Some of them thermally less stable and mechanically less sturdy, and these kind of things. So they are dependent on what? The kind of an aggregation, the kind of a structure you have, and the composite that is formed there. That is where, what is it? So the chemical composition, structural details, as well as size and shape, and all the elements present, all of these were. So the filler structure on large scales up to micrometers was studied by TEM, very small angle X-ray scattering. So then you get a model, you try to fix with using various dimensions, etc. Try to compare these with this one. Yes, you could find in these ones a larger ones, a smaller ones, and the overall cluster with the branching. You see the branching this side, branching this side, branching this side. So just like branching here, branching here, branching here, branching here, all of these. So these have been fitted using the Sachs measurements in that. So you have your the TM microscopy. If you do not do this particular thing, it's very difficult to fix. So you need to have the modeling, and instead of just simple experimental theoretical modeling, this is an experimental modeling. So the experiment gives again the X-ray scattering of small angle type, and then using the small angle data, you try to fix this particular thing, and this is compared with that. Okay, so from this you can get a smaller length scale inside the branches, small silica aggregates, and their average radius has been reduced by this particular analysis 35 to 40 nanometers. You have different kinds of things, 35 to 40 nanometers, and all those things you have. And the silica fractions investigated here is 18 to 21% of the volume. You just not the entire volume, because it is a low angle scattering that you take. So that means you take very close to the beam, very close to the beam. Very close to the beam is between 10 to 20 degrees. So you can see that, and within that volume is 20% of the volume that is being used, and that's where. So a central piece of analysis is the description of the inter-aggregate interactions by simulated structure factor for polydispersed spheres representing it. So you can see each one is a cluster, the inter-cluster interaction forming a bigger cluster here, and these are the bigger clusters, and individual smaller one. One is also a cluster, because this whole thing is the 200 nanometer kind of thing. So the cluster inter aggregate kind of interactions, all of these kind of thing. Okay, so you can also use some additional techniques. As I said, the TEM is a family of techniques, not just one single technique. You can attach many techniques to that. One of them is electron energy loss spectroscopy. Again, by making some modification, by tuning a little bit in the configuration that I showed, you can measure all of them. Huge things can be measured, a variety of things can be measured, and this particular thing is very sensitive to the central atom and what is the coordinated to that. That means coordination spheres, the nature, the extent of the electron density, and the bonding, all of these. So that is where you can study here. So this is a very effective way, electron energy loss spectroscopy, to obtain the chemical information, such as valence and coordination specific atoms. So fine structures in an electron energy loss, if you look at that, that will have a lot of information. There is a fine structure of that main peak, and that is what is called the energy loss near edge spectroscopy. So it is a EL. In the EL, in one peak, is very close to the edge. So near edge structure, that will have every information on this matter in terms of their chemical valence state level, bonding, all of these information. So now let us look at one example on this here. Let us look at the one, draw your attention to the right side panel on this here, which is shown for the Al2O3, gamma Al2O3. So in this you would see the Al, of course you have samples separately also with the Al, with the tetrahedral, Al with the octahedral, and you can see the energy loss spectrum for the tetrahedral is a red one and the octahedral is a blue one. And if you add these two spectra, you will find this kind of thing. Okay, so these are all there from standard materials, as well as you can calculate, bifurcate and get it. Now this is the experiment which is done for the gamma. This is what you have for your element. So how do you explain that? So if you try to fit this, deconvolute this and fix it with the, and it will get fitted with the part of the tetrahedral, part of the octahedral, and then you can take the areas, and you can also talk about the ratio of these. I have not written on the slide, but you can take the ratio, that what proportion of the tetrahedral sites are there, what proportion of the octahedral sites are there. These are extremely important in the solid state chemistry, in the material science, for their properties. This is why, how they fill the voids, how they make the packing, they all depend on the shape, geometry, size, every parameters, and the exterior charges, etc. All of these. So that is how it is. Okay. Now on the left side panel, again draw your attention, this is a chromium. The two types of compounds are shown here. One is a superconductor kind of material, potassium chromate. Other is chromic oxide, which is superconducting. So again, this near-edge spectroscopy for the electron loss. And if you look at these ones, for these the chromate case, it is the chromium 6, and the chromic oxide is the chromium 3. So, and these are the tetrahedra here, and these are the octahedra. So octahedra with the chromium 3 center, tetrahedra with the chromium 6 center. So they will have, if you look at the peaks, they are not exactly the same. So you can easily identify their presence. You can quantify also here for this. So, and then thereby you can correlate this with respect to their properties as well. So that way it helps the EELS properties of all of these. I think we have been looking at these examples. We will be looking at a few more also as we keep moving across this particular course, and we will take up those examples in the following up class. Thank you very much.